Welcome to Daring To, a podcast that finds out how CEOs and entrepreneurs navigate today's business world. The conventions they're breaking, the challenges they faced, and the decisions that they've made. And lastly, just what makes them different. Well, welcome today. On my podcast is Evan Goldberg. If you haven't heard of Evan, well, you may be one of very few people, because Evan started what is probably the first cloud computing company to exist today. Today, we think of cloud companies as though they've always been around, but they haven't. Evan started his career with Oracle Corporation, and most people will know who Oracle are. A Harvard graduate who joined Oracle when there were only 900 people. I can't imagine what that was like, Evan. Only 900 people in a company today that's got, I don't know, millions of employees. How did that feel when you first joined them?
Well, the journey has been the reward, actually. We started as a very small company, grew up to be a public company, and then transitioned to be part of a very large company. So kind of the full arc of what might happen to a business. But, we feel like our organization is as vibrant, as it was, 21 years ago. And that's sort of my day-to-day responsibilities, is maintaining that vibrancy so that in another 20 years, we can look back and have accomplished great things.
And you talk a lot about today, tomorrow and beyond, about existing beyond just as an organization for today, but also thinking about tomorrow and much, much more about the future. And we're going to come on to that, because as the EVP and the founder of NetSuite, I mean, you carry a big weight of responsibility, particularly as you were acquired only 3 years ago, having built that company from scratch. And I do want to touch on that a little bit. Did you, as a young kid, think, I'm going to own a company and run a company and create this fantastic opportunity for businesses of all sizes to be able to leverage something that's really important to enable them to sustain their business future? Did you like wake up in the morning as a young kid dreaming that?
I can't say that I was that prescient, but when I was young, the main thing that attracted me to technology was programming and the ability to sort of create something out of nothing. Really in the virtual world. And so, I guess, and when I started programming when I was young, and we were still doing it on mini computers, as they were called back then, and you typed on this teletype and printed it out and on rolled paper. But the one thing that was common, that I think is a current that's run through my entire career, is that what I got very excited about is building things that people would find useful and that would help them in their day-to-day tasks. And since most of one's waking hours, or a good portion of it, at least during the week, is working, I guess I was sort of attracted to, I guess you might call it, the sort of the B2B world, as I developed my skills as a programmer. And so I guess that's that's the current that runs through it, is making people's jobs easier on a day-to-day basis.
And I've read some of the articles that you have been published in, and where you've shared sort of your passion and where it comes from. And you often talk about being that person that, that you light up. I'm sorry that you're not here to see your face, but that you light up when you're able to provide a solution to somebody. And it was something that you discovered very early on, even when you were in education, that you were able to provide a solution to individuals that helped solve a problem. And you had that kind of aha moment that this is something to do. But there are many budding entrepreneurs out there today that must be looking in excitement at hearing from you, to hear, like, how did you do it? I mean, how did you get that courage to say, I'm walking, Oracle. I love you dearly, but I'm walking. I've got this idea that I want to create something special, and I realize that there's a need for it, and I can see something that maybe you're not seeing or have the time to do right now, and go off and do that. I understand that your first office was above a hairdresser's shop. I only wish it would have been above the hairdressers that I would go to, but it wasn't. But so talk about that, because it takes courage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I moved out from the East Coast of the U.S. Out here to California right after college. And so that was sort of my first entrepreneurial move. Didn't know anybody out here, and built a life, both a business life and a personal life out here. I was very, very attracted to the Silicon Valley, and, I grew up, where some of the more origin companies of the computer revolution were Digital Equipment Corporation, companies like that were in the Boston area. But I could see that the next generation of companies was in California. And I was especially attracted to Apple. I loved Apple computers. It was the first computer I ever had. And the Mac, I got that right when it came out and worked on it in college. And so I was really excited about Apple. But I actually got steered in another direction. My sister ran a mutual fund. She was an investor, and her fund was invested in Oracle. And she had personally met Larry, and she said, if you're going to go out there, you need to meet this guy, Larry Ellison, and you should go work for Oracle. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what relational databases were. But I met Larry, and we hit it off. And I'd say certainly, a lot of the courage and impetus to start my own thing comes from my relationship with him, and he was an amazing mentor, and I saw what he was able to do, and loved the idea of building not just a product, but a culture, and saw the best way to do that, to build a unique product and a unique culture, and going off and doing something myself. And so that actually NetSuite wasn't the first company I did. So I had an initial stab at it. That, played a really, really important role, not just because that company was my sort of mandatory Silicon Valley failure, but it also provided the motivation to create a company that would help startups succeed.
I love the way you call it the mandatory Silicon Valley failure, because, oftentimes people look at successful CEOs and startup individuals like yourself and think, it just worked for them. It just happened. But in reality, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of disappointments before that moment crystallizes into success. So share some of that with our listeners, because I think that's really important, because from failure comes learnings. And it sounds like you got some real gems from that initial investment.
And so, I jumped out of being, working at Oracle to being responsible for payroll and for real people's, salaries. And that's an enormous responsibility. And when that doesn't work out and you have to lay off people, or, and you ultimately maybe have to close your doors, it is incredibly painful. You feel an enormous burden of responsibility. And I didn't take that lightly. And certainly it provides you motivation for not having that happen again. And I was fortunate enough that at NetSuite, it's only been sort of the rocket ride up, not the descent back down. And but I think that it would be, besides providing that motivation, the experience of being a CEO and being responsible for business and growing the business, and learning the sort of dearth of tools that were available to help you, that was the primary motivation of creating NetSuite. I mean, it was abundantly clear that there was not great technology to help small businesses understand what was going on, see the trends, get control of, your kind of increasingly sprawling, what used to be small business, but now looks like a giant business when it has 50 people. That lack was so abundantly clear. I knew I had to create something like NetSuite.
And it's been a success. But let's talk about this whole concept of technology and cloud and everything that goes with it, from artificial intelligence to machine learning to robotics to intelligent automated processes. They blow people's minds. CEOs kind of talk about it, but if we're honest, most CEOs are yearning to learn what it actually means in practice. Boards of big companies and small companies are tearing their hair out, trying to capture this leverage that they've got right now, which they don't seem to have. So you're kind of a visionary in a way, because you saw the opportunity that what businesses needed was the ability to connect things together, to be able to really be able to provide value, was to have this ability to look right across your organization to understand what was going on. Did you realize that you were a visionary at that time? And how can you help? I guess my second question for that is, how do we help businesses really understand the power of technology in a good way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it starts with simplicity and understanding that anything that you're going to provide to a very, very busy entrepreneur has to be simple in some sense, or minimalist, I guess you might say. And so the vision that I had from the very, very beginning, and the web was still pretty young in 1998. The vision I had was a dashboard, like in your browser, that had everything about your business, and you could then drill down. So it would show you your sales, it would show you your expenses, it would show you your employees' information, or how your employee count was growing. These kind of key metrics right there in front of you in real time. So I guess if you want to say a visionary is someone that has a vision, I had an actual sort of visual image of what I wanted out of NetSuite. And the interesting thing is that we first had to build the components of the business system. We had to build accounting. We had to build CRM. We had to build a web store for people that wanted to sell online. Once we had those, we were able to actually create that dashboard in your browser. There weren't phones yet that could view those. And it was at that point actually that, and Larry, I give him a huge amount of credit. We started the company together. I had this vision of software to help businesses succeed. He had the vision of it was going to run on the web, and he was absolutely convinced that the future model of computing was going to be that you run these applications on the internet. And he'd joke that, that's how it's going to be for the next 1,000 years. I don't know what it's going to be after that. And so, it was kind of the merging of those two visions. So I was thinking of, one place you could go that had all the information across your business. And he was thinking this would be delivered over the web. So really that's what the conjoining of those two ideas was NetSuite. And it's really in the name.
And yeah,
and so when we announced what we called the executive dashboard, which was that one page that you could go to in your browser that had everything about your business, that Larry got re-engaged, and he actually became the product manager of that part of the product for several months, calling me because he said, okay, now I want to log into your instance, to your account, so I can see what's going on in NetSuite. In particular, I want to look at this dashboard. And he would log in, and then he'd call me and he'd say, oh, you need to add a line graph that shows your sales by day compared to previous quarters, things like that. And we'd dutifully add it in and push it out to production. It was easier to get the product of our endeavors to our customers very quickly. And I'd call them and I'd say, yep, okay, take a look, see if you like it. That was actually really exciting.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Was that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but was that hard to have somebody that was your mentor, who was really passionate about what you were doing, but also kind of getting right into it as well? Did you at any point feel like, Larry, I love you dearly, but can you just back off for a little while and just let me play with it?
I relished it. He's incredibly smart and obviously had been thinking about running a business for far longer than I had. So it allowed us to move really, really fast in getting that part of our product, which is really still the central kind of, the heart of NetSuite. When you log into NetSuite as an executive or as a manager or even as a salesperson, the first thing you see is that dashboard with everything you need to know and everything you need to do. So it was absolutely great that, the company that we started together, that we were able to collaborate on the meat of that sort of central capability.
So I want to talk a little bit about you yourself and taking the company over those years up until 2016, where you came back into the fold of Oracle, because you're quite an interesting individual, having read about you, particularly around your focus on culture and the things that are important. And that's often rare to have CEOs actively talk about it, but then show some visible proof that it actually exists in reality as well, that it's not just a set of words. You have been very, very passionate and have shown that commitment in the social impact space as one, which, I hold dear to my heart as well, because I'm a great believer that profit with purpose is good for the world. And we are now faced in a world today, and we are seeing CEOs stand up and say, hey, we are more than just about making profit. We are about purpose, and here's what we're doing. But many people will be sitting back and going, yeah, it's the same old, same old. They realize they've got to say the words, but you're different. You've actually done some really important things in being able to offer that technology that you have to nonprofits in a way that's helping those organizations to be really successful. What was it in you? What is it in you that drove you to want to do that right at the very early stages? I'm intrigued. Share more.
Yeah. And culture primarily grows organically. It's driven from the top, but not really from pronouncements. I mean, I think things like values are really useful, but they don't really create the culture. They more just report on the culture.
Yeah.
The culture comes from the people and who you bring into the organization and how you act as a leader. To set an example. And, I've always had, sort of balance in my life between, the professional, the business, and the sort of philanthropic, and the personal and the philanthropic, and, especially in, where philanthropy and business overlap, I was able to take some of that and bring it into the workplace. And so, for example, our social impact program began because my wife was president of the local PTA. They had a terrible system. They used 2 copies of QuickBooks, one for donations and one for expenses. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Okay, I'm tearing my hair right now. I'm yes, I can feel their pain.
So I said, why don't we put NetSuite in there? And we did, and it worked out great. I mean, volunteers were able to actually work at home, et cetera. And so once I saw that I said, oh my God, there must be thousands of organizations that could benefit from a system like NetSuite and sort of do good better. And so really, I think the culture comes from who you bring into the organization and what they bring from outside into the workplace. And so that's I think how we've grown up as part of NetSuite, to have this culture that really embraces social impact. It's often described as like a family here. And when we come into a bigger company like Oracle, well, one of the most important things initially, and Oracle is really smart about this, is to just do no harm. And so we were kept sort of sequestered and allowed to continue to do what we were doing really well, and then start to pull in some of the benefits that come from the bigger company. And I think what's really exciting about being part of Oracle is that Oracle's undergoing a transformation, I think, in the same way, about thinking about the continuum of what employees do and making sure that they are really engaged. And that involves a lot of different things. But the social impact of what the organization does is an important part of it. And so that's been really exciting to be part of that sort of evolution that's happening in a very, very large company. It's like turning the Queen Mary, but it's very in sync with what we've, as a smaller part, have been focused on all along, which is a culture which is very employee-centric in addition to being very customer-centric.
So I do a lot of work with organizations of all sizes around culture and to convince organizations that culture is important. It's often really hard because they're like, yeah, all right. Yeah, we've got it. But, talk to us about like what's going to make our business more sustainable. And I look them in the eye and I go, that's it. It's how you bring together the essence of what makes people want to be there. And you talk about some things around letting people come up with ideas to have the opportunity to create. Like, don't get in the way of helping people to create ideas. Let them have the autonomy that they need to be able to do that, because people will create great ideas. In a world today where we know technology is advancing at a faster rate than it has ever done before, where it is enabling us to do things that we have never been able to do before, where products like NetSuite are enabling companies to kind of bring together some synergies and identify trends and analytics, inform companies around what they can do to innovate and move forward. It comes with some price, which could be an opportunity, or, a potential risk for organizations. How can we help businesses and employees see the future of the world and technology as something that comes together for good? I do believe that it is. And you talk about what we're seeing today around cloud technology and technology in general is not just being a technology shift, which to me is like music to my ears. You talk about it being a generational shift, that this is a shift in how businesses will continue to operate in the future. How do we leverage the best out of that? Big question, I know, what's your thought?
And NetSuite, NetSuite is fundamentally a B2B company. We're selling to businesses, and we're somewhat insulated from some of the more controversial privacy issues that come from the large, tech companies that serve consumers. And so that's something that we just are happy about, because there's a lot of consternation right now. But businesses really just sort of drink up what we give them. They are not conflicted. And we can bring the AI technology that we bring in is not about, facial recognition. The AI technology for us is things like identifying orders that may not ship on time for customers that deliver products because of the history and because of other things that are going on out in the world. And or looking at projects. If you're a company that's a project-based business, like an ad agency, or a consulting company, projects that look like they're at risk of going over budget because of, trends that we've seen. So the AI that we use, I think is really relatively benign and agreed upon by the people that are the people that own the data that we're looking at, which is their data, that it's to their benefit, and it's of course all of this is opt-in, and we're just starting to scratch the surface. I mean, we're trying to solve the types of things that AI does that I think are generally uncontroversial, are suggestions it gives you on the phone, hopefully based on relatively simple things that only, that the phone knows about, so to speak. I hate to anthropomorphize the phone, but it's going to take you longer to get into work today because there's traffic.
Yep.
People like that. That's a relatively benign use of AI. There might be something more sinister behind it, but we believe that those kinds of suggestions for businesses, how you can get someplace a little bit faster, or where there might be obstacles to achieving your goals, and where we're going to be right a lot of the time. I mean, one of the things that's great about those suggestions is when they suggest that there's traffic on the way to work, well, usually at this time of the day you are going to work. And sure enough, their traffic predictions are usually pretty good. So that's what we want to do, is relatively simple assistance. It's really intelligent assistance that we can give, and we're confident that those suggestions will be correct most of the time. And we're just at the very, very early stages of that, but that's very, very exciting to me as an entrepreneur, and for, to help other entrepreneurs.
And there's two things that I want to sort of pick up on there. One is that, yes, you talk about NetSuite being a B2B offering, but actually you talk about 6 things that when I sort of sat back and reflected on them, I went, wow, these are the kinds of words that I use and many people use to help large corporations think about how do they navigate the world of uncertainty today. You talk about the need for simplicity. We've already talked about that. In a world where time is of essence, people are time poor. Nobody wants complexity anymore. There's enough complexity everywhere else. They kind of want things that are simple. And you mentioned that. You talk about agility. That has to be important today, not just for B2B businesses, but businesses at large and non-profits, organizations that are trying to do good better. You talk about productivity. We've seen productivity levels decline in companies today over the last several years because there's only so much they can do around efficiency. So they have to look at different ways to innovate and change. And you talk about the need, like control. How do you keep control but let go of control is the way I kind of frame it. I may not have framed it in the way that you would, but I'd be interested to hear that. And the power of visibility. So they are quite very clear and succinct points that I think are really valuable to businesses. Would you say that those elements have been true as you thought about your business since its beginning? And do they hold true for what you do going forward? Or are they more advice points that you try to think about from your customers' perspectives? What would you say?
Well, there's two driving factors that lead us to do what we do. It's it comes from our experience, our personal individual experiences in business, my experiences as an entrepreneur. I grew NetSuite. NetSuite had a growth journey that's not unlike many of our customers. I learned a lot in that growth journey, and I try to bring that those learnings into what we offer to businesses. And then, true empathy can only come from actually really doing your best to walk in other people's shoes. We spend an enormous amount of time with our customers. We send our product engineers out on what we call field trips. Mm-hmm. To go visit customers that are using NetSuite and see their business in action and how NetSuite plays a role, seeing it on the ground. And all of, and so the creativity that comes in building the, sort of the next generation of business tools is informed by, sort of those two elements. And my experience, in building NetSuite and what we hear from a lot of from our customers when we go out and visit them is that the two most critical elements, there really are three critical elements. It starts with visibility because that's what they lose as their business grows. They used to see everything. They, like you talked about NetSuite being above a hair salon. When we were above a hair salon, everybody was right there next to me. I knew everything that was happening. I knew every, salesperson that was selling and every support person that was giving customer support. You lose that control, that visibility as you get larger. And so that's the first thing that they want, is to get back some of that visibility that they lost as they grew. The next thing is control. There's less control as you grow and you don't know everybody and you don't talk to everybody. But then you mentioned agility, and that would be the third, super critical component, and one that we've especially focused on NetSuite, because we know that these organizations that we serve are changing very rapidly, and whatever we provide as a solution on day one, may not be exactly the right solution a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. So we've built in NetSuite a great deal of flexibility, and as you transform your business, the NetSuite service can transform with you. So those are that's how we have thought about it in the past few years. It's not dissimilar to how we thought about it initially, but I think it's evolved based on our experience building NetSuite and our experience, spending time with our customers.
Let's talk about your customers, because you used a word that I confess, I don't think I can think of one CEO that I've heard use the word. I'm sure that they have. I just haven't heard it. I've heard lots of buzzwords around we're becoming customer centric or we're becoming more personalized. But you use the word empathy. Like we are empathetic with our customers. That's really what drives us. What does that really look like? I'm intrigued. Again, I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated because it's a term that I go, like it's already like making me feel warm about what you guys are offering, and it's unique and it's different. So what does that look like for people that work at NetSuite?
Well, I would say in one's work life, empathy is probably the most important skill and practice. Because I don't think it's not just with your customers, but it's obviously with your coworkers. And, so we've tried to build it into the fabric of NetSuite, both in our internal operations as well as how we, relate to, our external, customers and partners. It displays itself in many different ways. In our product organization, as we develop products, we use personas. So we try to develop a picture of what the typical user of this part of the service is like, and it goes beyond just how they use NetSuite, but what their job duties are, what their frustrations are, what they view as challenges, what they view as opportunities, and then from those personas, there are user stories which track how users operate on day to day and how they want to operate. So that's empathy in a sort of product development setting. In a customer service setting, the best customer service is, I think, delivered by people that can empathize with, a frustrated caller that's having a problem. In sales, listening is the number one skill, and empathizing with the pain points that brought a prospect to your door, and the opportunities that that they feel on a day-to-day basis that they want to take advantage of, I think is the critical success factor there. So across our organization, both internally and externally, we've tried to build empathy into the fabric of how we operate.
I think I need to be one of your personas, because I think I'm like right at that extreme end. Like will like be that customer that has all of those moments that you really don't want to see. So like if you ever need anyone to be a prototype, please do give me a call, because I'm sure I will have ticked every box that you would think is your worst nightmare. I did once offer to go to Microsoft's offices in Silicon Valley to sit with their customer service team a long, long time ago, because I had just this desire for them to understand what it feels like to be a customer on the other end, not because they didn't want to help, but I offered my services for free, and they promised they would bring me back, and they never did. I wonder why, but there you go. But it is a really important point. So now I'm going to get on to maybe some stuff. Like I do like to kind of push the edges a little bit. So here you are, a disciple of Oracle. You go out into the big wide world. You do it. You make it. Like you create something that you can sit back, and the people that are in part of that organization are really proud of you. Isn't there a risk to having gone back to Oracle that people are sitting there going like, why did he do that? Like, why did he go back and take like his baby and put it in a bigger organization? How do you respond to a question like that?
One of the things about being part of, Larry was who I started it with. Larry's who I work very closely with it on now. So there's been a lot of continuity that you might not have in other circumstances like this. We've had great continuity with our organization. As I said, Oracle did this right, and they had a first do no harm sort of approach. And as a result, we've been able to preserve our culture, and we've been able to actually refocus in a lot of ways. And I think people that talk to me see the excitement that I have right now, in that we're more targeted towards these very fast-growing entrepreneurial organizations, even than we were when we were independent. And that's a big motivator for me, to be able to have a clear target for what you're doing, and then to be able to, to take a team, and most of our team is still at NetSuite. That, if you look at the people that work for me, they've been at NetSuite for 10, 15, even 20 years. To take that team and refocus them on a clear target, and with a clear value proposition, that's exciting. So I think we've been able to maintain the excitement that we had before. And then we're able to leverage the reach and the technology that Oracle provides us. We're moving into the Oracle cloud infrastructure data centers. That's where we're going to run NetSuite out of in the future, and that's very advanced technology, and it's really exciting. We're going to use Oracle's autonomous database, which is an incredible use of AI, to make databases how they really should be, which is you just ask it a question and it gives you an answer. You don't worry about all the details of implementing a database. So being part of that, being able to reach out internationally, and Oracle has incredible reach there. That's been extremely exciting for us, going into countries that we wouldn't have reached for years and years as an independent company. So I think there's always pluses and minuses to any transition. And I've just, focused on accentuating the positive.
And I would say that for other sort of entrepreneurs that are out there, actually, you could argue that you were very bold and actually demonstrate a skill which I think many CEOs need today, which is the ability to be able to reflect, and not get so absorbed in what they have created that to lose sight about what the overall purpose or vision of their original idea or concept was. And by actually coming back into the fold of Oracle, that's not an easy decision to make, because ultimately you created something, but it sounds like you reflected back and said, like, how can I continue that vision and how can I make it bolder, better, and have a greater reach? That's not easy for entrepreneurs to give up, right? Because it's there. So that advice of that process that you went through, the weighing up, maybe the struggle, is a bold move and a reflective move. Do you think that many entrepreneurs should be thinking about more of that reflectiveness as they grow? Is that something that you've grown and developed over the years, or do you think that's something that's always been part of?
Well, I wouldn't presume to give advice to other entrepreneurs.
Oh, go on, please do.
Are in different situations. We had a somewhat unique situation, and I think in a lot of cases it isn't like that. But a successful acquisition should typically keep the best people, and so I would hope that organizations that are looking at acquiring entrepreneurial startups are really thinking about how to provide a situation where that person can still be entrepreneurial, where there's still good upside for them. It doesn't mean forever. Entrepreneurs do have a tendency to come up with great ideas, and maybe that great idea can be accomplished at a new organization or a larger organization, and maybe it can't. In my circumstance, I kind of feel like we had a very, very big idea that we're not done with it, and that it could still consume most of my creativity. And I'm lucky in that sense that the job is sort of never done in making organizations have better visibility, have better control, have better agility, so that they can grow faster and achieve their vision. That's a job that's sort of never done, and we have a great platform for that. And if you're in that situation, I do think it's worth looking at whether it makes sense to walk away. I mean, for me, NetSuite is sort of my baby, and so
it's a growing baby, though. It's growing very healthily.
It's hard. It's really hard to abandon that, and I think maybe there are entrepreneurs that do that too quickly. But I am very, very sympathetic to the fact that the situations of acquisitions is not always same, and ours was somewhat unique.
Let's go back a little bit to culture then, because you talk about it's something that you feel passionate about. It's something that I truly believe is the cornerstone to success for companies today, and was previously and will continue to be in a world where we can no longer rely on certainty because of the pace of change and everything else that's going on. So you mentioned that culture for you involves a number of things around communicating with people. Like you talked about your team going out to customer sites so that they can actually see how their work is having an impact. You talk about the importance of diversity. So obviously, as a woman who's been at exec levels in senior organizations and who is passionate about diversity, not just about women, but in its broadest sense, what does that mean to you from a culture perspective? And as a senior exec in today's business world, how do you get your voice having a greater reach around some of these things that are important around purpose, making sure people feel like they are engaged and contributing the best that they can at work, and valuing diversity in its most broadest sense? I do feel senior leaders have a much bigger role to play beyond their own organizations today. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. So, we talked earlier about, elements of creativity and reaching, a variety of different types of businesses. And we do have enormous reach, especially as part of Oracle. And the only way we're going to succeed is with a diversity of backgrounds and a diversity of experiences, life experiences, business experiences. And so it's incredibly important for our business that we have a diverse workforce. And it's work to do that. It requires continuous. It's not something that you can do in one initiative. It requires continuous focus, not just on expanding your recruiting reach so you can reach non-traditional candidates, making sure that everybody's trained in things like unconscious bias, so that we're very welcoming for people of diverse backgrounds. But then really, really important is mentoring people from non-traditional backgrounds, as well as, of course, women that come into organizations that may have been majority male. And so, Oracle has some great resources for that, for networking and for mentoring for women and other, traditionally underrepresented groups. And again, it requires something continuous. It doesn't happen immediately, but if you bring a diversity of people, qualified, motivated, energetic people of all backgrounds into an organization, you make sure that the organization is welcoming to them, and you make sure that you're mentoring them so that they, can overcome, roadblocks. That's how you ultimately develop a diverse leadership team, and that's the best situation, obviously, because then you're truly leading by example. So, but that's a long process that requires a lot of attention and energy, and so that's what I try to motivate our teams to do, over and over and over again. And success is, Rome wasn't built in a day, as the cliche goes.
It does.
And, we want to see continuous improvement in diversity and inclusion, and that's the right thing to do, but it's also going to massively strengthen the business.
And given that technology is growing so vastly, and we know the skills that are so much needed today and tomorrow and in the future, how do we help the young generation see technology as a career that offers so many great opportunities? I was blown away by a statistic that you had quoted around the lost value of not having young girls interested in necessarily in technology or having the opportunity to be in employment. It's something like $13 to $15 trillion. I mean, that just I speechless, as I am right now, speechless, right? That's really hard for me, by the way, to be speechless. But, there, of course, there's loads of initiatives, but it's a massive skill gap that we've got globally right now when we know what the horizon brings. So how can we do more to really give opportunities around the world to education around technology?
Right. And of course, some of this is outside the purview of any one particular business, but certainly as an organization, we try to do our part there, supporting organizations to help with girls' education. I mean, as we said, we have a very substantial social impact program at NetSuite where we actually give away the service, and we give away pro bono work of employees to help implement NetSuite at organizations that are doing things like getting involved in girls' education around the world. So that's one way that, we as a company individually can help. And Oracle has some amazing initiatives in that regard also. I think that, that's just one component of what needs to happen. one of the things that I'm most excited about that isn't directly connected to what, my day job, is the advent of online education and the ability for people around the world to close some of that skills gap, people of all backgrounds, to close that skills gap. So that's another area that I think, countries and organizations can promote, to help. And there's, obviously there's massive work that needs to be done. So it's, they often say, think global, act local. And so we try to do our part in NetSuite, to make sure that, we have diversity, and then those women and people of traditionally underrepresented groups that are successful at NetSuite, we give them, opportunities and encourage them to go out into the community, and they can be mentors, for the next generation. So, if there's individual action, there's obviously large collective action, and all those things together, when you have a person like Michelle Obama behind it, there should be, very, very serious progress over the coming years.
Well, our whole topic on education is something we could spend a lot of time on. It's another area of passion and interest of mine, and we should maybe think about that, because I think there's a whole revolution around education that can be so valuable, and where technology can play a role, and execs, it's massive.
Just to add on to that, there's things that you do as part of your business. There's things that we need to do as individuals.
Yeah.
So my wife and I have supported the computer science program at the school that my daughter went to for middle school and high school. She's in college now. But early on, it was clear that the school is all girls school, didn't have as sophisticated a computer science program as it really needed. And that was clear to me. And we got together with the administration of the school and figured out how we could bring in a specialist, and that we could not only improve the computer science education for girls at this school, but also be, sort of a thought leader for girls' schools, but also for all types of schools. And when I looked at where that school was in terms of its computer science curriculum, I'm like, well, geez, if this school, a Silicon Valley, highly funded school filled with, the senior people in Silicon Valley, their children.
Yeah.
If this school can't figure it out, how is a school in Oakland going to figure out how to teach computer science to their kids? And what was really gratifying about that effort is that the woman that we brought in as a computer science leader ended up sharing her successes with schools all over California, and became a member of a sort of consortium of these teachers, thinking about how the learning could be utilized across the state of California. So that was really, really exciting. And so,
I have a warm glow across my face.
Things that individuals can do.
I have a warm glow across my face, because actually you have put in a nutshell that it's not necessarily massive, big things that are going to make a difference. It's everybody doing maybe some small things that are going to really make a difference. And I honestly believe we should schedule some time to talk about education, because it is a massive topic, and there is so much opportunity, and there is a hunger to apply some of the innovation and thinking that entrepreneurs like yourself and other leaders can bring to what is essentially, our future. So a big believer in young people and them carrying the future forward in a way that will make this world the world that it can be and should be for everyone. So I've got to ask you two questions. One is, you got to tell me about Zen knitting. Come on. I have not heard of an organization that really believes in bringing people together and making it, spending time at work and offering people things that bring them together. And I just want to know, what is Zen knitting? Because I want to be part of that.
Well, I haven't actually taken that class.
Okay. Anybody from NetSuite, they need to get him on it.
We talked about culture, and I think that bringing people together for learning things outside their direct job responsibilities, but things that they might be interested in I think it's important. And continuous learning is where the world is going. And you spend an enormous amount of time at work. And so, it's not just Zen knitting that we do. We do intro to Japanese, intro to French, intro to Spanish, We do cooking. I mean, this is obviously a break from work, but it also brings people together from, disparate parts of the organization. They get to meet. And again, you spend so much of your time at work. If, a portion of that time can be used as part of sort of a larger continuous learning. We give finance classes for retirement financing, things like, just a whole variety of different things that I think we can provide, again, for our employees to grow and to learn and to meet and to interact. And so that's sort of where Zen knitting falls in our quote unquote strategy.
You do know what you're going to get from Christmas from a number of people that work at NetSuite now, don't you? A set of knitting needles and some wool. It's coming your way.
Really?
A place near you.
I prefer a hat.
No, well, you know what you can do? You can take the wool and you can knit it. No, that's for you to learn. And then you can post it on Instagram and we can all go yay. All right. So very last question. This is about daring to people that dare to think differently, act differently, do differently. What's your daring to, Evan? What would you say? What are you daring to do? Either have done, are going to do, or are doing right now?
Well, one of the most daring things I did as part of NetSuite was, we have a company band. Actually, we have a couple of them. We have a couple company bands, and a couple years ago,
I'm loving it.
They had we have a user conference with about 10,000 people, and it has a gala, and we were in Las Vegas, and they decided it would be a good idea, to have the company band open for the main act, which was ludicrous.
I want to be there.
I played 2 songs on the drums. I'm a drummer.
Oh.
That's my Zen knitting, is Zen drumming. And I had to play a couple songs, one by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I love them.
On the drums in front of something like 5,000 people. And that was definitely one of the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life.
I bet that was harder than making the decision about what to do, either starting NetSuite or, deciding to go back to the Oracle fold. I bet you that playing that was much harder of a decision to make.
So it is funny because there was one song, Creep by Radiohead.
Yep.
This was at another one of these performances that had a particular drum fill that was challenging, and I worked on it a ton. And when the song was over, and I nailed it. And when the song was over, the band leader, who's also our head of engineering, said, well, Evan worked harder on that drum solo than he did on his keynote address today. So,
well, look, it had the right impact, right? Fabulous story. What a great way to end. So, Evan, if people want to know more about NetSuite, they want to know more about you, how do they get in touch with you? What, website, Twitter, LinkedIn?
Unsurprisingly, they go to netsuite.com.
And on LinkedIn, will they find you on LinkedIn or? They
will find me on LinkedIn. I forgot about that. Yeah. I don't generally use LinkedIn that much, so I can't tell them exactly how to do it. But if you search for Evan Goldberg, there's at least a chance that you're going to find him. If you search for me on Google, you'll find Seth Rogen's writing partner for a bunch of his movies. He comes above me, which I'm very happy about.
Wow. Well, if not, just look up drums, Radiohead, and you're bound to find him. If you want to, thank you so much. It's been a fabulous podcast. I've learned so much, just from what the stories that you have shared and your journey, and I know our listeners will as well. If you want to find out more about Dare Worldwide and what we do in terms of helping businesses from a transformation and technology perspective, then look us up on www.dareworldwide.com. You can find me on Twitter at Rita_Trahan. And obviously you can sign up and listen to Daring to podcasts. So thank you very much, and look out. My second book is coming out next year, and you can always get the second edition of Unleashing Capacity, because it's all about how do we unleash our inner capacity. So thank you very much, Evan. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great holiday, and I can't wait to see that hat that you knit.
We'll see about that, but thanks, Rita, for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Take care. Thanks for listening. Enjoyed the conversation? Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of Daring To. Also, check out our website, dareworldwide.com, for some great resources around business in general, leadership, and how to bring about change. See you next time.